What's up, guys? I'll give it about 1 or 2 minutes, all right? Let everybody sign on here. All right, everybody, I'm going to get started. Keep track of your questions as we go. Let me share my screen with you guys. Okay. So tonight we're going to go over a lot of mind map stuff, which is really what it's all about, because it helps you. Mind map is I'll go over a lot of this tonight, but how the brain forms habits. That's the science of mind mapping. That's what it's about, like the actual neuroscience of how the brain can connect dots and create new habits. First thing I want you to do before I get into this, you're going to sit nice and tall, okay? I want you to get 10 neck rolls one way, 10 the other way, and then we're going to do something with the eyes. Just make sure that you're nice and relaxed. Some of you probably been staring at screens all day. So get 10 one way, and then we're going to go 10 the other way. Okay, next thing you're going to do, you're going to take your eyes and keep your head straight ahead. You're going to do 10 circles, okay, 10 clockwise, 10 counterclockwise with your eyes. And you're going to notice that one way is probably going to be more difficult than the other. And it just might be difficult in general to do, but you got to work those eye muscles. So get 10 each way. Okay, guys. So if you're staring at like screens most of the day, you can actually get what's called ocular lock, okay, where the eyeballs and the muscles that control the eyes almost get frozen. Now, when that happens, like if that's very difficult for you to do, it's okay. You just got to start working on it, because if your eyes get locked in like that it's kind of like reverse engineering a stress response with your body. Okay, so you want to, your eyes should be free to float around. So just remember that if you're staring at screens a lot, you should be working those eyeballs constantly. You could do figure eights with them, do the circles with them, all that type of stuff. So with mind mapping, the main thing, and I think I mentioned this last week, that you have to recognize about the brain is that it's hell bent on survival. Everything your brain processes and does is with survival at the forefront. So you see this little cartoon here. The husband is in his reptilian brain, which you'll learn more about tonight. But the brain is hell bent on survival. It can take about 50 minutes tonight. You got to remember as we go through this, we're all so-sos. What that stands for is stressed out, survival-oriented humans. Okay? If we don't learn how to manage our stress and we're letting the animal brains run the show, we're not going to live much of a fulfilling life. The triune brain, that's what mind map is based in. There's 3 levels of the brain, as you're going to see, and I want you to walk away with some tools that you can put to use right away. As I teach you the mind map stuff, I'll teach, just like with the fasting, I'll teach you the same thing in different ways. I don't know what's going to connect with you, but it's about you grasping these concepts. Because once you learn mind mapping, it's a tool that you can use in so many areas of your life. So what is a habit? It's when information of significance, okay? So it's something that you assign to be important. You repeatedly carry it out until it becomes automatic. So the beauty of a habit is that it frees up headspace. That's another survival thing. If I had to think about everything, all the habits I had to do, just as you have all these habits like brushing your teeth, going to the bathroom, taking a shower, all these things, if you had to actually consciously think about that stuff every day, you would burn up so much headspace that you wouldn't be able to locate the next threat. You wouldn't be able to deal with the next big stressor in your life. So a habit is actually a survival mechanism. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. Prediction and response, as you see as we go through this. I'll be talking a lot about that. Your brain loves prediction and response. Prediction and response. That's how it moves forward through life. So with the triune brain, you can see this picture of the brain here, but you got the oldest part of the brain, right? So picture my spinal cord comes out, and then I got like the root of my brain, the brain stem. That's your reptilian brain. That's the oldest part of the brain. Surrounding that, the next part of the brain that grew was the mammalian brain, okay, the mammal brain. And then on top of that, you got the neocortex or the human brain. So you got reptile, mammal, and human. To simplify it, reptile, mammal, and human. With habits, everybody says it takes 21 days to form a habit. That's on the very short end of habit formation. That's intense. If you can form a habit in 21 days, that's not very normal. 66 days is the average. I find when you start breaking the 6-week barrier is when it can kind of really start to stick, but 66 days is the average that it takes to form a habit. They're stored, in case you're interested, in something called the basal ganglia. Okay, that's where there's actually a structure in your brain that's kind of like a computer, and that's where once we got to move it to that part of the brain for it to become permanent. Now, if you look over at this little chart I drew, the way most people go about trying to form a new habit, so think of, again, New Year's resolutions, think of any diet that people undertake, they go very intense, okay, so this is a time intensity curve, they go very intense and they burn out, okay, very intense over a short period of time. We don't want that. We want the blue line, which is gradual intensity over a long period of time. The people that we have at the gyms that have lost like 100 pounds and kept it off, that's what they've done. Okay, it's slow and steady over a long period of time. You're going to see why that is the case as we continue to go forward. Now, 3 structures I want you to be aware of. You don't have to memorize the name. I'll throw it out there because, again, I don't know what's going to stick with you. You have the ACC, okay, that's called the anterior cingulate cortex. That part of your brain, a couple cool things about that. That's the center of your brain that's really for connection with other human beings or other mammals. That part of your brain is larger in women than in men. Estrogen enhances the size of this part of the brain for connection reasons. Can go back through evolution, I go back thousands of years, however far you want to go back. That part of the brain in women had to be bigger because the mother had to nurture the children to ensure their survival. Whereas in men, they had to go out and hunt. They couldn't be quite as connected. Okay, they had to leave the hut. They had to leave the pack. They had to go out and hunt and kill and fight and all this stuff. So estrogen actually grows that part of your brain, and testosterone actually shrinks that part of your brain. So estrogen actually grows it. Testosterone actually shrinks that part of your brain. I talked about the basal ganglia, and you have something called the amygdala. Now, this part of your brain, okay, it's like the lizard part of your brain, is always scanning. You're not conscious that it's doing this, but it's always scanning your environment for interruptions, things that could kind of jump up, like a cell phone going off or whatever, right? But the amygdala is always scanning your environment for threats. It's always scanning. That's one of the reasons I never have my phone ringer on, and my phone is always upside down. So I don't let this interrupt me, okay? And that is a big threat for your brain. Remember, your brain likes prediction and response. If you're in the middle of doing work, middle of a conversation, your phone goes off, that throws you off, right? It's an unexpected interruption. So if you look at these two things, we want your brain to be the one on the right. These are scans, images of rat brains. So they took two different rats, and the rat on the left, the one that's not as dense, okay, with the neural connections, they forced to exercise, whether they were zapping it or they just put it on a treadmill that it couldn't get off of, like a wheel. It didn't like to exercise. They forced it to exercise. The one that has the very dense connections, that one, they made it pleasurable. They put it through a maze. They fed it cheese, but they made it so it was like a game. It enjoyed the process and looked forward to it. Look at the difference in the neural connections. That's what habit actually looks like in your brain. When those neural connections kind of become thicker and lay down more pathways, that's when stuff happens automatically. My point with telling you that is it's got to be some element of fun or joy in what you're doing. Okay, it's got to be some element of joy or fun in what you're doing. Your brain is not going to it's not going to form a habit around anything that it does not find pleasurable to do. Okay, I'll repeat that. If you don't find something pleasurable, your brain will not form a habit around it. Last week, we went over your 5, 6, 7. The importance of that again, right? The acronym AIR. Your attention, where is your attention? We want it on your intentions. That's your 5, 6, 7, right? Those are the deeper reasons behind why you're doing this. And the R is repetition. Okay, so you keep putting your attention on your intentions and repeat, in this case, the fasting until it becomes a habit. The reason that's so important at the beginning of forming a habit is you have to constantly direct your attention. You do have to use willpower at the beginning of forming a habit, but long term, if you rely on willpower, it will fail you every single time. So that's another thing. The brain is not going to form a habit around purely willpower-based things. Willpower is based up in the human part of your brain, very energy dependent. By the end of the day, your brain is spent. You're going to fall back to old habits, but continue to review your 5, 6, 7. Put your attention on your intentions until the act becomes a habit. I can't overstate that enough, guys. Now, this is something cool I pieced together a couple of years into when I learned mind map. So mind mapping, interestingly, I learned the same year I started fasting, I was exposed to mind map. So they kind of came into my life at the same time. So I've kind of grown them together. But Abraham Maslow, some of you have maybe heard of before, famous psychiatrist. He had what was called the hierarchy of needs. Now, what's cool about this is basically the triune brain theory in a pyramid. So these bottom two ones, safety and physiological needs, if you look at what's in those levels, this is your reptilian brain. You go up to green and yellow, these are the mammal brain, the mammalian brain. And the blue one is your human brain. Okay, self-actualization, forward thought, okay, goal setting, goal attainment. Now, the thing you'll see with mind map, if you're having a relationship issue, a work issue, if you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, okay, if you're not getting enough sleep, those parts of your brain are always going to pull you back until you solve those issues. That's what mind mapping is really about. When I do a mind map session, it's addressing things in the person's life that just keeps coming up, because those are the things that are always going to pull you off track from your habit creation. Remember, habit creation is in the blue. So if you got unresolved things going on in your life, usually they're relationship things, they're career-oriented things. Most of the time when I do mind map, it's addressing those things and helping the person come up with a strategy to deal with that stuff, so now they can move forward, right? But that's a different way to look at mind map. All right, you want to get to the blue part of the pyramid to form new things in your life. So I already told you the brain is hell-bent on survival. Where this comes from, really. So if you go back, let's say 5,000 years, you have two sisters, twin sisters, and they would go out every day. They would cross the meadow, right? They lived somewhere in Africa. They would cross the meadow where they lived. And the one sister was very timid. She's always looking around. She's always looking to see what's going on, very scared, always nervous that a lion or a tiger is going to come out and kill her. The other one would just skip along, happy-go-lucky, no worry in the world. She would go across the meadow, and most of the time it was fine, until one day a lion does attack and it kills the sister that has no worries in the world. So the one that was always worried and hiding and very timid and trying to play it safe, those are the type of genes that have gotten passed down through generations. Okay, the ones that are really focused on survival. So that's where it comes from, right? If our ancestors weren't really focused on survival, we wouldn't be here right now. So your brain is hell-bent on survival. So just keep that in mind as we move forward, okay? Now, what is threat? You'll hear me talk a lot about threat. It's basically the reduced ability to predict the future, okay? A couple things with this. Let's say you have 20 pounds you want to lose, right? What I like to say is the thing is not the thing. You don't have that excess 20 pounds because you didn't know what to eat, okay, that you should move or you should get enough sleep. There's something else, as I already stated, going on in your life. That's the root of the problem, right? The excess weight is just a symptom. Most people try to address just the excess weight in that example. We got to get at what is the problem. Otherwise, the symptom is going to continue to reappear. Sustained psychological stress. Okay, this idea of just always being plugged into the internet, always people having access to you, always worried, right? We don't want to always be worried. That is a relatively new thing. In reaction, so there's a big difference between reaction and response. Remember, the brain is a prediction and response. Okay, it's a pattern recognition machine. Reaction is the animal brain. Reaction is think of road rage, right? There's no thought put into it. We want to be responders, okay, which means we're making logical choices, logical decisions. Another way to say it is the brain is Velcro for the negative. The reason, like when you guys do your nightly check-ins, we want you to put your win for the day, and you could do that in the morning too, but if the brain is hardwired for the negative, we have to constantly refocus it to some positive things in our life, right? The brain is always going to focus on the negative in life. That's what I've told you in the past few slides. That's what it's hardwired to do. So your job is to write down a win or 2 wins or 3 wins every single day. Constantly redirect it to things that are going to put it into a positive state. Now, getting back to threat. So think about diet. Think about diet with this. 3 things that can put you into threat. So when people used to come to me and I would write them these real fancy diets and measure everything out and tell them all types of stuff they didn't even need to know, that was way too fast for people that were coming to me for help. I was trying to change 10 things. You can't do that, right? With the brain, if I give you one thing to work on that you want to do, your chance for success is about 80%. If I give you 2 things, even if you want to do both of those things, your chance for success drops to about 20%, right? So you can't go too fast with things. Can't go too fast. So that'll put you into threat. Now, too slow. What is this one? If you came to me, you did the Panda, and let's say your goal, again, I use weight loss because it's a very easy concept for people to understand. Let's say your goal was to lose 20 pounds, and at the end of 45 days, you haven't lost a pound. That's going to make the threat level go up. That's a case of things moving too slow. Too slow. Think about everything that's going on in the past year with lockdowns and all that, right? A lot of people's threat level is very high because they feel like they're stuck. Things are moving too slow for them. They're stuck at home. Kids aren't in school the way they normally are, all this type of stuff. So you can start seeing this stuff everywhere in your life. And then another big one that's going to put you into threat is lack of clarity, unclear intent. Remember, the brain loves clarity. It doesn't like when you're going to a new social setting, a new party, you don't know anybody there, there's going to be a level of threat there. Okay, there's lack of clarity. So you're always trying to get clear on what is the next step, what am I coming into here, that type of thing. A key concept I want you to get is when your emotions are high, logic is going to be low. When your emotions are high, logic is going to be low. Remember this for yourself and any relationship you have in your life. When I do mind maps, if people get emotional, it's totally fine, but I know that basically the human has left the room. Anything I say at that point is not going to make sense to them. So if you find yourself getting emotional and worked up or something, that's where the mind map is key. I want you to feel those feelings, but be aware that the thoughts you have in that moment are not going to make any logical sense. You're going to get all worked up over nothing. Okay. And conversely, if you're the type that's like very anal, very type A, everything's got to be planned out. Like you think you actually have that much control in your life. What's going to happen to your emotions? They're going to be very dull. Okay. So you probably know people like this that are overly type A. And for those type of people, it's almost hard to get a smile out of them. Okay. So you have both extremes there, but logic and emotion don't necessarily mix all the time. Now, this is important. When I was talking to you about that part of your brain that's bigger in women and smaller in men, the anterior cingulate cortex, that part of your brain is very, very, very sensitive to judgment. Okay, judgment is a huge threat to your brain. Go back to the tribes I always talk about. Let's say Anthony was in my tribe. Okay, he's in our tribe, and we all of a sudden decide we don't like him. We don't like the hat he's wearing. We don't like all this stuff. Now, we start to judge him. What happens is we're going to put him towards the outside of the pack or kick him completely out of the tribe. His chance for survival goes way down, right? Judgment, your brain perceives judgment as a very real threat to its survival. The reason most people do not like to speak in front of other people is because the brain is sending that message. All these people can judge me about what I'm going to say. They might call me out on my BS, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's why, there's this huge fear of public speaking with people. Once you realize that it's a brain just kind of going on with all this nonsense about judgment, the level of threat goes down. So with judgment, like with the Panda, be mindful of when you're judging yourself negatively. right? Let's say you step on the scale, if that's your goal, and it didn't change that much 1 week. What you need to focus on is, did you follow the process? That's all you can control, right? The scale is an external reflection. Sometimes it's a lag. It'll be behind of your effort. But just with judgment, be mindful of that. And environments, okay? Environments are very, very threatening to the brain. Now you have 6 different types of environments, okay? I don't go over all 6 tonight, but the number one environment, the first environment, is up here, the inner dialogue, what's going on in your brain. Now, as far as physical environments, I think I talked to you about this last week. The most stressful time of the day is when your brain is changing from a sleeping environment to a wakeful environment. That's why, and you just look at hormones, cortisol peaks in the morning. Okay, that's a stress hormone. That is a stress hormone. It's an alertness hormone. We want that to rise in the morning. Okay, but you're changing environments. You're going from a sleeping state to a wakeful state. You're changing environments in your brain. We'll go into environments more in another lesson, but those 2 things can be very threatening to the mammal brain. And remember, this is one of my favorite quotes right here. Comparison is the thief of happiness. Comparison is the thief of happiness. Comparison is a form of judgment. Right? So just and I'll tell you this stuff just so you're mindful of it. Just catch yourself with that inner dialogue that you're having. One of the reasons that, and this made a lot of sense to me once I started studying all the mind map stuff, like dog therapy, okay, pet therapy. The reason that works so well is because with the dog, for example, my dogs, I can connect on a mammal level. Most people don't have a true mammalian connection in their life, or one that's consistent. Even your spouse or whatever, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever it is, your brain knows that they can judge you at any moment, judge you about how you made the bed, judge you about what you did with the kids, all this type of stuff. With the dog, to use that example, there's no judgment there. So you can connect purely on a mammal level, which is why pet therapy, dog therapy works. You're activating this mammal connection, which is so important for the brain. Most people are always walking around on eggshells, right? They're trying to impress people. They're trying not to stand out too much. They don't want to be judged. But that is why dog therapy works. It's a connection in the mammal brain with that ACC structure I told you about. Another cool thing with mind map, right? The way we evolved to learn, okay, is through storytelling. It's the oldest form of communication, really, verbal communication. So if you want to learn anything in your life, and if you read my daily emails and all that, you'll notice that they're always a story. It's always a story about something that happened in my life, because stories is the quickest way to learn something. So if there's something you want to learn in your life, if you're going back to school for something, tell a story around it. Tell a story around it. The brain, the deeper parts of the brain are hardwired to learn from stories. Okay, so when I talk about the gunman with mind map, the gunman is the stress. Okay, it's the stress in your life. So think about if I'm having lunch, okay, let's say it's on a Sunday and I'm eating lunch with my brother, one of my brothers, and this crazy guy comes in the room with a gun. And you can tell he's not right, and he keeps pointing at us, and let's say it's a revolver, right? And he's got one bullet loaded and the rest are empty, almost like Russian roulette. And we're trying to eat, and he's sweating and he's pointing the gun at us, pulls the trigger, nothing happens. Well, first of all, we're going to be in our fight or flight response, right? So you got 2 different parts of your nervous system, which I believe I touched on a little bit last week. You got the sympathetic, which is fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, that is a stress response. Fight, flight, or freeze. You got the parasympathetic, is digest, rest, recover, sleep. Okay, we need to get into that system more often. But if the gunman's in the room, I'm going to be in my sympathetic state. Now, if I'm trying to eat my meal, I'm in a sympathetic state trying to do a parasympathetic activity. Okay, so that's one reason I'll always tell you, if you don't have time to eat your meal in peace, and this is why fasting is so great, don't eat the meal. If you cannot eat your meal in peace, skip the meal. It's completely senseless to eat on the run or eat in a stress state or eat in an environment where you don't like the people that are surrounding you, like maybe your colleagues. So get away from the gunman. What is the threat? Let's start getting away from that. Let's get away from the gunman. And fatigue, guys. Let me just turn this light on so you guys can see me. Fatigue. There's an old Vince Lombardi quote: fatigue makes cowards of us all. So you'll notice that at the end of the day, again, when the logical part of your brain might be fried a little bit and the emotions might be higher, and you might go to bed thinking about something that happened and you're all worked up, and you wake up and all of a sudden it's not so bad, right? Your brain has replenished when you sleep. So I'll go over sleep in a second. I'll tell you a couple of cool things about sleep, but fatigue is going to move you much like your cup, right? As soon as that overflows or gets to the top, you're going to spill into a stressed state, right? And when you're fatigued, that cup fills up much quicker. You can't deal with stuff as well. So you got to be well rested. You got to take care of yourself as far as rest. Right? Fatigue is going to amplify all the negative in your life. Fatigue is going to amplify that. Now with sleep, again, there's another lesson where I'll teach you more about this, but first of all, the hours before midnight that you sleep, so let's say 10 to midnight, each of those hours, if you look at sleep, the people that study sleep, is equivalent to about 3 hours after midnight as far as restorative sleep. So each of the hours before midnight is equal to 3 hours after midnight of restorative sleep. So that 10 to 12 block or whatever is super important, okay, or even before that. Now, if you look at, so I think I mentioned Charles Poliquin last week. So I got to learn from Charles 3 or 4 times in person before he passed. The guy was a genius, but what he would always, everything he taught really with the body was based in functional medicine. But the hours of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. were physical repair of the body, and 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. were psychological repair of the brain. Okay, so there's like 2 different blocks if you look at like Eastern medicine or functional medicine of what's going on when you sleep. And putting your own mask on first, you got to take care of yourself, right? Take care of yourself first. You're doing the Panda, take care of your health, plan fun times in, plan workouts in. You got to manage your energy. If energy's low, again, you're going to be closer to that gunman at all times because you're going to be closer to fatigue. So with mind map, guys, it's about the actual, how the brain actually works, right? This is not about having a positive thinking, right? That's part of your inner dialogue, but that doesn't work for people, right? Positive thinking. So it's not a mindset problem. It's a threat problem. What level of the brain are you having some kind of threat, right? And I'm not just telling you guys all this stuff just so you know it. At the end, I have a slide. By the end of the week, I'll have out the mind map schedule, so you can start scheduling one-on-one mind maps with me, right? And I'll help you kind of work through, and you'll get to see how this works in an actual session. What is the big thing in your life that you just is really weighing you down? And it's, if you go back to when I showed you that time intensity curve, when people come to me, let's say their level of anxiety and they rate it, it's like a 9 out of 10, right? They're very anxious. The goal is not to get them to a 0. It's to work on something in that session where they can go from a 9 to an 8 over the coming weeks. And then let's get them from an 8 to a 7, right? So it's just like any other habit. We go slow and steady with this. So these are just some cool little things you can do to kind of get you more, if you feel like you're in a stress state, okay, and whether that's actual in the moment or your brain is running away from you, these can help you get into more of a parasympathetic state. Remember, you got parasympathetic is rest and digest and recover. Sympathetic is fight, flight, freeze. So you could put your, just a couple things. You could put your heart on your abdomen, your hand on your heart and your abdomen. And you could do this when you're just sitting there, if you're on a conference call or whatever, releases oxytocin. Okay. And that's only going to happen. The reason this works is you feel safe when you're in this position. Okay. So that's one thing you can do. Eyes. If somebody's like a threat to you, break eye contact with them. Okay. Or if you're very angry with somebody else, or maybe it's somebody that works with you, break eye contact with them. You're not going to maintain the level of anger if you break eye contact. Lips. So the reason that like babies are always putting things in their mouth, pacifiers, all that, there's so many sensory organs. Like babies learn about the world through their mouth when they first start. They have so many sensory nerves here and whatnot. So very tied in. Okay. So like a pacifier, it pacifies, it puts you more into the parasympathetic state. They're very tied into your nervous system, your lips. So you could just rub your lips. Okay. You could just rub them and it will calm you down if you do it long enough. And it won't take long. The P is predict and respond. I talked about that, right? It's not that you have to be correct. It's the attempt that counts, because you're attempting to give your brain some clarity. It's the attempt that counts. So an example, I have somebody that went through, she did 1 or 2 pandas. But now she's having some stuff go on in her personal life, this lady, just with her job. It's just crushing her with the schedule. It's crushing her. So she wants to do some work on that. And I said, well, listen, the thing you have to do here, because I see this a lot with Mind Map, is let's give yourself a deadline. How much longer you're going to be at this job? Because if you just feel like it's going to go on forever, you're going to go crazy. So think about this in your own life, how this applies. As soon as you say, okay, by June 1st, I'm going to have my resume out there and there's going to be an end at the light at the end of the tunnel. The level of threat goes down. So that's an example of predicting. Okay. It's attempting to predict what's going to be coming down the road. So you start to use this stuff when you can use it. The M is the big one. So the same part of your brain where the emotions really rise out of, the parietal lobe, okay, is the same part of your brain. It's one of the main motor centers is that movement comes out of. So I tell you this, if you're getting emotional about something, you're getting worked up about something, you have an argument, go for a walk. Okay, what happens is you rob that part of your brain of the emotions that would be coming out. And because again, the movement comes out of the same area of the brain. So you'll rob it of its energy that's going towards negative emotion. So anytime you need to chill out, or if let's say you have a meeting that you're not looking forward to having, or a phone conference you're not looking forward to having, try to do it while you're walking with the person or on the phone with the person. So rhythmic movement, that's one of the reasons exercise is so great for us. But it doesn't have to be exercise like a workout. It could just be a walk. And I talked about getting away from the gunman. So stuff I want you to put to use right away. Reframing. Okay, this is one of the number one skills I believe that everybody should learn, and it's very simple. Your brain, well, this ties right into what's called the open loop theory. So think about your favorite TV show, your favorite series. Okay, it could be a fictional series. Let's say it's a TV show. Okay, at the end of the show, they leave you kind of like a cliffhanger. They're going to leave you. They're not closing that loop, right? There's a gap in that loop. The brain, and this is why people binge watch shows, wants to fill in that gap. It does not like that. Okay, remember, the brain wants to know what's coming. It wants clarity. It wants to predict and respond. So there's a gap there. The people that make these shows and whatnot, the ones that are very, very addictive, they know this science. Okay, so they leave it where, okay, I got to find out what happens. Let me close that gap. And then what happens next episode, the same thing happens. So you just go on this binge watching episode. But for us, the way this can be used to our benefit, the brain is going to give you an answer to anything you ask of it. It'll give you an answer to anything you ask of it. So this is called reframing. So one of the things I like to do in my personal life is, if let's say something didn't go as I had planned or predicted. What I do is I ask myself, what's great about this problem? What's great about this problem? Because the brain will come up with an answer to that. Okay, you might have to sleep on it. You can journal about it. But if you start asking, what's great about this problem? How is this problem making me a better person? How is this actually moving me closer to what I want in my life? Your brain will come up with an answer. Reframing, like Friday morning, there was a guy working out. He's doing the fat shredder at he's working out in Hillsboro. So a short little reframe, because he said, yeah, I get to that 20-hour mark and then he's trying to do the fasting because I get hungry and then I eat. I said, listen, when you feel that, the reframe that you have to use, and I told you guys this last week, that's what fat loss feels like. I saw him Saturday morning. He goes, I did that yesterday and it worked. He goes, it got me right through it. So it's all about the frame that you're putting around the current situation. Your brain is incredibly powerful. Remember, it's all about where your attention goes, your energy flows. Okay, where your attention goes, your energy flows. Your attention is largely dictated by the questions, the inner dialogue that you're having with yourself. We talked about 3 wins. So your energy is your number one asset. Right behind that is your confidence in life as a human being. Energy is your number one asset by far. Okay. Number 2 is your confidence. And the reason I have that at number 2, not equal with energy. If energy is low, confidence is going to be low. But confidence, we have to constantly focus on that. Okay, we have to constantly focus on that. And you do that by writing down 3 wins. That'll take you 10 seconds, 20 seconds max. We talked about air. Remember, that's attention. I was just talking about attention. Attention on your intentions and then repetition. But emotion, right, on the positive side, let's say, I had that picture up of me, Devin, and the kids. That's an attention amplifier. Like if there's something I'm slacking on in my business life that I'm just, for whatever reason, I'm putting off. All I got to do is go back to my 5, 6, 7 and think about what type of future I want to provide them. Right. And that's going to amplify my attention. It's going to make me get the job done. Recipes for you. Now, you don't have to do this right now, but I do want you to journal about this. Think about health, success, happiness. Like those are 3 big ones. And what is your definition? Okay, what is your recipe, not anybody else's, for those things? Like, what is your definition of health? Right? Because if we don't have, this is where the brain needs clarity. If we don't take time to develop our own recipes or definitions for things like success and health, we go to the default. And I can tell you right now, after years of being in the fitness field, the default for health is I have to weigh a certain amount or I got to look a certain way. Okay. And so, I don't know if I mentioned this last week or not, but when I went through the last time I competed in 2014, I did a lot of work with my therapist because I knew the show competing would usually put me in a negative track, right? It was put me into this not a good place. So we did a lot of work on that. I made sure that I, developed my definition of health, because prior to that, right, if I didn't look a certain way in my brain, it was very hard for me to handle that. Okay, which made me like a prisoner. It made me like a prisoner in my life. So coming out of those shows in 2014, I had my definition of health, and it was like energy. I want my energy to be good. I want to be strong. I want to have my joints not to be in pain. I want to have good endurance. I want to have a good attitude. So I had all these things. And after that contest, those 2 contests, my ego, my brain kept saying, you got to keep looking this way. You got to keep looking this way. You got to be ripped. And I would keep going back to it really helped me. I would go back to my definition of health. I'd be like, nowhere on my list for health is it how I look. That's not even a part of my recipe. And I was able to finally conquer those demons. Like it was nowhere. And I just kept going back. Wait a minute. That's not on my list. It doesn't matter what I look like. I'm going to look how I'm going to look. So my point would tell you that this stuff is very powerful if you take the time to develop this stuff. Know what success means to you. right? In every situation, what does success look like for you? Again, the default for that is got to have X amount of money. So then what happens? People start setting these goals. I got to make this much money. That just like your weight is a side effect, right? It's like, well, what is the path you're actually on in life? It's not just here to make a certain amount of money. It's what is your mission? What are you after, right? But you're not going to know this stuff if you don't take time to develop your own recipes and definitions. So that's the clarity piece that your brain needs. Here's some quick state changers. And again, guys, this stuff with mind map, the more you, if one thing sinks in tonight, that's going to be a real good thing, because I'll be exposing you to more of this. But if you could control the inner dialogue up here, that's where the magic happens. Once you get control of this. So Hebb's law, this is something you can use at any moment. Hebb's law is basically what gets fired together gets wired together in your brain. So what gets fired together gets wired together. So think about your favorite song. Okay, something just came to your mind when I said that. Whatever that song is, it's your favorite song because at that point in your life, when you first started becoming exposed to that song, you first heard that song, there was something good going on in your life. It was a good period of your life where there's great memories. Could have been a first date. It doesn't matter. But that song got wired together with that moment. And the reason I tell you that, when you play that song, it can instantly put you back into a positive state. So one of the things I'll tell people is develop a little playlist of your life. It could be 1 song, 2 songs, 3 songs, and listen to that in the morning. Listen to it while you're showering, right? Hebb's law, what gets fired together gets wired together. So that's one thing that you can really change your state quickly. So I'm giving you stuff here that can change your state. If you find that you're going into a rut, these things on this list will work very quickly to change that direction. Movement, we already talked about that, okay? You want to move, right? That's a very quick way to change your state. Be the bee, what this means, so again, go back to attention. I talk about attention a lot. When we're feeling overwhelmed or we're feeling anxious or anything like this or fearful, it's because we're too focused on ourselves. We're too focused on what's going on, the clutter in our head. So being the bee, what that is think about a bee, how it pollinates, and it affects the whole world, right? It doesn't realize the job it's doing, but it's affecting the whole food chain just by pollination. Pollinating one flower, dropping that off at another flower. So for you being the bee, if you're finding yourself going down a wrong thing, put your attention on somebody else. Okay, reach out to somebody. Say, hey man, I'm thinking of you. I just want to know you to know how much I appreciate you. Just want to see how you're doing. You will feel better instantly. I promise you. I do that all the time. Okay, so it's being the bumblebee is what we call it. And again, the importance of this, if you are in a positive state, you're much more likely to stick with your habit creation. All this stuff ties together. Journaling and writing. So journaling to me is better than any therapy out there. So when you write, you activate the human part of your brain, especially if you're writing in cursive. Big fan of writing in cursive. So what happens if you're having some type of issue in your life and you start writing about it? It's not for anybody else to read, but what happens is you slow down, right? The act of writing is slower than the chatter that's going on up here, and you're bringing the human on to write. So what happens is you bring clarity to the situation. Emotion is lowered. So journaling is very powerful to just take a situation that's bothering you and just write about it. You'll be shocked if you haven't done that, about how quickly you resolve that issue. So journaling and writing is a very powerful thing. And let me see here. I can't see the bottom of the screen. There we go. Prediction and response is the ultimate safety. Remember, it's the attempt. It's the attempt. Predict and respond. Predict and respond. This is where, like, having options in your life. Always create options, right? Options give you freedom. So when I talk about recipes for like happiness, everybody's different, but the one constant I always see with happiness is freedom is one of the ingredients. Freedom. Okay. So with prediction and response, you might not be able to know exactly what's going to happen in a year. Nobody does, right? But give yourself different options. If this happens, we're going to do this. If this happens, let's have this option. So we're just talking about freedom. Okay. This stuff is stuff I want you to be aware of with your inner dialogue. If it's, I have to, I need to, I must, I should, right? My therapist always used to tell me, stop shoulding yourself. If you're doing all these shoulds, right, you're not really living on your terms. So just remember that, because it all starts with your inner dialogue. Everything you create in your life, I'm just about done with this, guys, but you have the process of creation is thoughts first. So you have thoughts, okay, then words, so what you're actually saying or writing down, and then action. It's three things, that's it. But your thoughts up here, I want you to really start being mindful of the conversation that's going on in your head. So key points to remember: is the approach you're taking making things simpler or more complex? We always want to go towards simple. You always want to go towards simple if you're trying to create new habits in your life. The beautiful thing about fasting and the way we teach it with the Panda is we're not telling you to do more things. We're telling you to do less things in your life, right? So within the Panda is infused all this mind map stuff. We're not telling you to complicate your eating. We're telling you to make it more simple. What's the brain really trying to tell you? So this is stuff I'll kind of help you dig through when we do the one-on-one mind maps. What do you think is the best way to proceed? So even in a mind map session, it's about you coming up with the answers, right? It's about you. You know yourself the best. What's the best course of action? That's at the end of the 45 days. I want you guys to know how to make tweaks to stuff, to know what the best course of action is, right? You're going to be your own best guide when this is all said and done. What's getting in the way of you reaching your goal? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Remember, we're trying to make a transformation. We want to go nice and slow, and then that winds up being faster because it's smooth. Think about all these people that New Year's resolutions, they jump out the starting blocks and then they burn out. And next year they got to start over. So they actually haven't moved anywhere in years. Where you guys, if you learn this, slow is smooth and smooth winds up being fast. You're going to get there much faster when you're going slow like this. Choice, we talked about that, having options. Okay, let's see. Go over supplements in a second. Stuff I want you guys to pay attention to, besides just your metrics and your weight and all that stuff. Performance. Okay, so this is stuff you can report to me on. And it's not good or bad, but you could say, oh, you know, my performance kind of took a nosedive in my workouts this week. Okay, that's something we got to look at. Energy is going to be a big one. If your energy, let's say the scale doesn't change at all one week, but your energy is starting to really, come alive and you're feeling much, that's a great thing. Okay, so this is all stuff that's internally your body's telling you. This is how, I would like to make tweaks, is based on this stuff, not the external stuff. Attention, okay, mindset. You might be and you might get to what you thought was an ideal weight, and let's say your mindset is not good because you did not enjoy the process. That's not a good thing. Okay, so we want to be mindful of this stuff. Appetite and hunger, sleep and bathroom habits. So just note any changes in this stuff when you kind of give me your weekly feedback, and bring it to my attention. Okay, because these are all clues for how we can make tweaks. Some of you asked about supplements. We actually have juice pills at the gym, okay, for those of you that either want to supplement. So I do this in addition to the juice. But if you want to supplement or you don't like the taste of the juice, you can do that. And then over here, two main supplements that I recommend to people is magnesium. Okay, so if you're going to get magnesium, again, we sell this stuff at the gym. We got like really good stuff there. But if you're going to go buy it out elsewhere, when you look at the magnesium, you want to make sure that it ends in the letter ATE. Okay, it wants to be a chelated form of magnesium. So like magnesium fumarate or chelated or something along those lines. If it's magnesium oxide, your body can't use it. And that's what most of what's sold out there. So just be mindful of that. Magnesium, the reason I'm telling you that you want to look at that, stress depletes magnesium and magnesium helps us cope with stress. Okay, you're not going to get magnesium with the quality of food that's out there these days from your food. So that's why I tell you magnesium. And D3, super important. Vitamin D, it's not actually a vitamin, it's a hormone. So if they actually taught that this was actually a hormone, I think people would be more likely to take it more seriously. Every cell in your body has a D3 receptor. It affects every chemical process in your body. And if you live in this part of the country, pretty much if you live anywhere, but it's particularly Northeast, you're going to have low vitamin D levels. Okay, we get vitamin D from the sun, but when you put sunblock on, sunglasses, all this stuff, you block the conversion of it in your body. So even during the summer, your levels are not going to be optimal. So this is something you want to be on. Okay, and I'll post a mind map schedule. I'm going to put that up in like a Google sheet. Just look at what times are available and just put your name, and then I'll start setting them up. Okay. So any mind map questions, any fasting questions? Let me stop sharing. If you got anything, you can just unmute yourself. I know that's probably the first exposure for some of you to the mind map stuff, but it'll make more sense as we go along. Okay, guys, and if there's any questions you have that you want to ask me privately, again, you all have my number. You can shoot it to me privately if you need to. So you should be in a 48 right now. Okay, everybody had a good first check-in. And report back on that biofeedback stuff. Again, that's usually how I'll make the changes, is based off of that stuff, not necessarily the weight and the external measurement. Any questions?
Yeah, Kyle?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah, a couple of things. Just last Monday and this Monday, the only two times I've noticed this, I was just freezing. Is that
totally normal? So it's funny because the past 2 Mondays haven't really been that warm. Now the good thing is, once the weather really turns, that won't be an issue. But when you guys fast, blood flow is going to kind of go away from the extremities when you're just sitting around, and it's going to go in towards those internal organs, right? It's going to go to some of those stubborn fat areas, but that's 1,000% normal that you're going to be chilly, especially if it's not a warm day when you're doing a longer fast.
all right? Quick, two other questions, if you don't mind. On
Yeah, of course.
fasting. I'm conscious of probably being borderline dehydrated most of the time. Since we're not eating now on the fast days, I'm drinking a lot of water, much more water than I normally do. And even though I'm drinking it, urine is so dark. So I'm wondering if I should even be drinking more water, or is that another common phenomenon you're aware of? The fasting, that your urine's getting really dark, or is that a sign of something?
No, it's you could get it slightly dehydrated if you're doing the juice, like the salt. I'm not going to be worried about dehydration, because sodium is really how we hydrate. But as far as the color of the urine, it could be dehydration, could be something else. But are you doing the juice? Are you drinking the juice?
Yeah, not as much as, I don't think, the quantity you're recommending, because one thing, I have great habits with the bathroom, and this is throwing me off, and it's just kind of an inconvenience to
Sure.
I have to deal with that.
And it's not going to be a permanent thing. Like, that goes away. Just so you guys know, like with the juice. But that, again, that's very normal when you first start with that stuff. It's going to make you sometimes have to run to the bathroom. Part of it's a cleansing mechanism, and part of it's pulling water into the gut. Water follows sodium. That's why I was asking about the juice, though, because sodium is actually how you hydrate, guys. It's not water. Water follows sodium. Okay. So if you have the sodium, you don't need to take in as much water. How about the other days? How's the urine on the other days? Clear?
I would say this whole time it's been really noticeably darker, even on the days I'm eating.
Yeah. Could be. We'll have to keep an eye on it. that's where we got to play detective and keep an eye on it. I do know from when something I figured out when I was doing all the competitions with like fat loss, you probably most of you will probably notice that your urination rate will increase. Okay, that's a common thing. But like even if you were doing dry fasting, this is something cool. Your body can actually produce up to 1 liter of pure clean water on its own each day. So dry fasting is when you don't take in any water as well. But where your body gets the hydrogen from to make the water is from fat cells. Okay, the fat is forced to open up a little quicker and faster to release hydrogen. So it could be with the, I want to go over the liver stuff too, but it could just be increased fat loss to different color in the urine too. What else we got, guys? Polly, you have a question?
I do. Is Sunday still one meal,
So
or is it?
yeah, it's what if that's you're saying, is that like your cheat day or free day, whatever you want?
Yeah, like, am I supposed to be refueling that day, or is it just still one meal, but eat whatever you want?
Yeah, it's whatever you want it to be. Now, the reason I say that is, at this point, like how long I've been doing the black version that you guys are doing, I feel better when I only eat one meal, even if that's on my cheat day. So like, I would say once every 5 weeks, I'll actually have a second meal on my off day. But I'm always like, man, why did I do that? I should have just waited. So, but if you feel that you want it, then have it, right? That day is more like just a release, like a psychological reward for you guys. Nobody in the group that I'm aware of. So there's a whole bunch of stuff we can go over. Maybe that's like a bonus lesson with like actual cheat days when you physiologically need them. Nobody in here physiologically needs one, right? We used to use them with bodybuilding to kind of stop everything from crashing in the body, all the hormones from crashing. When we do it, we cut calories real extreme, then we'd have to get a massive amount of food in to keep the body humming along. But it's more so that, with that day, Polly, it's more just whatever you want it to be, whatever you've been looking forward to. Eat whatever you want. If you want to eat throughout the whole day, you can. You'll probably notice that you're not going to feel as well when you do that. So it's good, but there's no right or wrong that day. It's really just like a free day. And that's for long-term adherence too. What else we got, guys?
Hey, Kyle. It's Anthony.
What's up, Anthony?
Hey, I experienced in your book that you had, I don't know whether, because I've done quite a few fastings. I've been doing 2 48s a week and doing the OMAD on Wednesdays. But this past Friday, when you had your, it's okay to have a bad day, I was an empty pit on Friday when I did eat. Just how you had experienced in your book when you went to Waffle House and just could not, just eating and eating and eating. Is that, when you had your session saying that don't feel, just get back on that. So I just wanted to say that, is that something that I will experience sometimes, or did I maybe do too many 48s and also do, 5 a.m. workouts and continue to push that in my body? Because you mentioned like the pendulum sometimes swings one way and it comes back the other way. And I felt that Friday was just, I just could not, anything I was eating and everything I was eating, it just did not feel like I had enough.
So if you didn't feel like you have enough, you could be getting, so we all have a set point with our body weight and body fat. Okay. But if you start approaching the bottom of that, that's when hunger signals are going to kind of get out of whack. But I would say we keep an eye on that. If the same thing happens week after week, then we got to address something, right? But it could be that you said you're doing the 5 a.m. workout, all this stuff. So if we're fatigued, you guys, that's going to mess up your hunger hormone big time.
No.
Okay, that's certainly a possibility too. And just note, like with yourselves, guys, if you get a bad night's sleep one night, just notice how your hunger is a lot different than if you got 7-8 hours of sleep, of good restful sleep. It is going to be completely different. And there's a lot of research to show that as well. So it's hard to say in a one-shot thing, Anthony. But don't beat yourself up over it. But this is all a learning process. As long as you learn, it's a win.
Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome, buddy. I think next week, guys, I go over, it's either next week or the week after, I'll go over some of the liver stuff. Right, so we're going to be doing that in about 2 weeks, the liver cleanse. So I'll give you the rundown on that and what that looks like and the importance of that. Right, the liver is a really fascinating organ, and it's your main fat burning organ in your body. So we'll be going over that. All right, guys, if there's no other questions, I'll post this video by tomorrow so you can have it as your reference. It wasn't letting me post the slides last week, so I'll try to do that again tomorrow. And let me know any questions as we continue to move along, okay? You guys,
Hey, Carl,
yeah, what you got?
when you talk about posting, you mean you're putting a link on the Facebook? And
Yeah, so I put, like, for the presentation, I'll make this a YouTube link. So I can
Okay.
text it to you too if you want. So just shoot me a message, okay?
Okay, cool.
It's just a YouTube link, yeah. All right. All right, guys, you guys have a good night. Keep up the good work. See you
All right. Good night.
later.